Welcome everyone to We Are All Library Advocates, Frontline I knew I was going to mess it up. Frontline Advocacy for Public Libraries with Dave Schroeder from Kenton County Public Library. Go ahead, Dave.
Hello, everyone. You don't have to know how to say advocacy, but you do need to know how to do it. So I'm glad there's so many people signed up to listen in. Advocacy is becoming more and more a thing that we have to do as librarians. And, you know, when I started my career in libraries a long time ago, we didn't have to do a whole lot of advocacy. Over the years, it's become more and more necessary, and especially in the last 5 to 6 years, it's become even more necessary. So it's good for all of us to know how to do advocacy and to understand why it's important. So we will start with that. So what is the best form of frontline advocacy? And this shouldn't be surprising to anyone, but I think sometimes we don't think of what we do on a day-to-day basis as advocacy, but it really is. So all that customer service we provide, no matter where you work in the library. So if you're behind a desk, if you're ordering books, if you're checking out materials, if you're cleaning the building, it doesn't matter. We're all advocates, and customer service is key to providing good advocacy. So we always try to meet our customers' needs and our patrons' needs. I know some people use customers. We still use patrons at KCPL at Kenton County. So I always use patrons. So, but I try to remember to use customers because, you know, different language, same meaning. But whenever possible, our goal at Kenton County is that when a customer or a patron leaves, they have a good feeling about their interaction, and they got what they came for, if we can. And we always try to go the extra mile. And remember, kindness goes a long way. And I'll give you a good example. Just this morning, I got an email from one of our county commissioners. In Kenton County, we have commissioners. Some of you all have magistrates. They're the same thing, except depending on where you live, you have either magistrates or commissioners. In Kenton County, we have 3 commissioners and a county judge executive. So one of the commissioners wrote a note to me this morning saying, thank you so much. My daughter came to the Covington Library and she needed assistance with a document that she was working on and then needed to print it out. And the staff was so helpful to her and she left very happy. She left with what she needed. And what a great service that was that she could receive at our library. Well, I guarantee you, our staff member did not know that that young woman who came in was the daughter of a county commissioner. Which brings up 2 points. One is you never know who's coming into your buildings. And 2 is we need to treat all of our patrons as if they are the county commissioner's daughter or whoever that might be. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter what they do. All of our patrons are important and we need to make sure that we're treating them all very well. But it's always great when you get that email from, you know, a county official or a local official or a state official saying what great service they or someone in their family got. That's the best advocacy you could possibly have because that person knows exactly the value of the library to them and to their family. So never underestimate the power of good public service. And that's what we are. We're public servants. And our job is to serve the public. So the better we can do that, the better we are as advocates and the better we position our libraries to make sure that we are putting our best face forward, which is really what advocacy is all about. So the role of the library staff has changed. We need to get out of our cocoons. We all like to be in our little cocoon that we all do our jobs. We all do them well. We all know what we're doing. But sometimes we have to break out of that cocoon and start looking at what does our job entail now that it didn't 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Traditionally, people in the United States saw libraries as a public good. You've probably heard that before. Libraries are public goods. Public schools are public goods. The conservation district is a public good. It's, you know, it's something that the government provides that benefits the people. Libraries have, public libraries in the United States have relied on that image for years as, you know, as just sacrosanct. You know, people just accepted it. Libraries are public goods. Who would oppose the library? Well, we found out that people do oppose the library. And we can't always just say, well, we're a public good, we're a good thing. Why would anybody, you know, we can't just lay back and say, well, we're a public good, so we don't have to do anything. You know, we just do what we always do. It's no longer enough. We need to start thinking more locally. Advocacy is moving from the State House to the courthouse, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit more today. Senate Bill 167, which was passed earlier this year, is an excellent example of that. We used to spend a lot of time going down to Frankfurt talking to our legislators and representatives. Well, Senate Bill 167 has, depending on what your local fiscal court does, 167 gives your local fiscal court the option to adopt 167 or not to. If they decide not to adopt 167, the way our boards are appointed remain the same. If they decide to adopt 167, then the fiscal court has much more power and authority of who they choose to select to be on the board. And different counties are going to do different things. Now, there are some libraries in Kentucky that are exempt from this. So if you're lucky to be in one of those about a dozen counties, you don't have to worry about this. If you're lucky enough that your county fiscal court decides they're not going to adopt 167, then we're just going to go on like we always have. If your fiscal court does accept 167 and adopts it, then advocacy becomes even more important, because we have to make sure that we are getting board members who will support the library and understand what a library does. And to do that, we have to have good relationships with our local officials. Not necessarily anymore our legislators, although we still want those good relationships, but we have to have those good relationships with our county officials. We need them with our county judge. We need those relationships strong with our magistrates or county commissioners, depending on the county you live in. But, you know, I talk to our county attorney occasionally for different things. You know, she's wonderful. She loves the library. She understands the library. She gets what we do. That's a great relationship for us. And, you know, you want to make sure you can build those relationships whenever you can. And sometimes that's easier than others, depending on where you live. A lot of what I'm going to talk today is harder for some people, depending on the county they live in. It's easier for others, depending on where they live. It's all about politics. And so sit back and relax and take it for a grain of salt. I am not saying that this is an easy thing to do. It's easier in some parts of the state than others, but it's something we all need to be working on. So, are you still standing behind your desk is a good question. Many of us need to start thinking about what does our job entail. Library directors in particular. I became a director almost 16 years ago, actually a little bit over 16 years. My job 16 years ago was much more in the office and not as much out in the public. My job has flip-flopped in the last 16 years. I am out in the public a lot. Last month, I talked to Rotary groups, a business council group, and a historical society. And then I attended a number of other meetings. I sit on multiple boards. All of this, you say, well, why am I doing all of this? Well, we need to be out in the public. We can't rely on that idea of being a public good. We need to be showing our value. So when I go to the Rotary, I start talking about all the things we're doing at the Kenton County Library. Our makerspace, our workforce development program, children's services, outreach services, you know, all of those things that libraries do, we need to start talking about those more in the community. When people find a connection to their library, they understand why they're paying those taxes. They understand why the library is important. if they don't understand that, or if they don't know what we're doing, then they're much more likely to dismiss us. And so it's our job, not just the PR staff and not just the director, it's all of our jobs to make sure that we are spreading the word of what we are doing in the libraries and why it's important. So get out and get moving. Get to know your local leaders and public officials. And I know that's hard in some parts of the state because some folks aren't as receptive to us as we would like them to be. And so if you're not having success with one county official, then work with other county officials. But build those relationships. Those relationships are so important to what we do and so important to who we are and who we're going to be in the future. And get to know your influence makers in your community. The influence makers, those people who have influence in your community, may not be elected officials. They may be other people. We're going to talk about it in a minute. So if you see your director out of the building more often in the last 3 or 4 years, more than likely that's because they're doing what I'm doing. They're getting out in the public. They're talking about what we're doing. They're letting people know how important it is. And it still amazes me when I go out and talk to the public that they're surprised that we do certain things, that they haven't heard that we do certain things. And they're astonished sometimes that we're doing these things. And it's our job to let people know that their taxes are going towards services that benefit our community. And if we're not doing that, nobody else is going to do it for us. So we have to take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and toot our own horn sometimes. And as librarians and as public librarians, we have not traditionally been good about bragging about ourselves. Librarians tend not to be too much of a braggers. We tend to be quiet, we do our jobs, we enjoy our jobs, and that's great. Well, we need to do a better job of telling other people what we're doing and get excited about it and make them excited about it, because that's important. Oops. Okay. So I'm going to give you just a couple minutes. You don't need to write anything down. You don't need to do anything, but just think, who are the stakeholders in your community and who are your advocates? Now, some of you are directors, some of you are working in collection services, some of you are working desks, many of you are children's librarians or children's programmers. But think of those people in your community that are stakeholders and who are advocates. Just come up with a few names. And then we'll move on to the next slide. And all of you should have a few names that popped into your mind immediately. So elected officials, some of those folks we need on our list. As again, we're moving from the state house more to the courthouse and even to the city hall. So advocacy is moving more local because control is becoming more local, not more state, especially with that Senate Bill 167. Our board members are stakeholders. They're volunteers. And I don't know if a lot of our people who live in our counties understand that our board members are volunteers. They're not getting paid to do this. They're doing it because they love libraries and library services. Our former board members, some of my best advocates out in the community are former board members because they feel more free to speak about what's going on now that they're not making the decisions. So many of my former board members are the ones that get on social media and defend us if something's coming up, or speak up, or talk to their friends about what we're doing. Because if we do our jobs and we tell our board what we're doing, then they get excited and they start talking to their friends. They start talking to the people, the groups that they're involved in. So those groups are very important. Our friends, or if you have a friends group, if you have a foundation board, we have a friends group at Kenton County and we have a foundation board. They're all volunteers. They are all library advocates in one way or another. They all support the library. So making sure that they know what we're doing and giving them talking points is a great way of being a library advocate, letting them talk for us. You know, people are more likely to believe someone who doesn't have a stake in the game. All of us here, we're being paid by the library. So, you know, our people will say, you know, well, you're just saying that because, you know, that's where your income comes from. Well, there's some truth to that, but I think all of us were attracted to libraries because we love libraries and we love what libraries do. But the general public likes to hear from other people. They like to hear from people who, you know, have nothing to gain from speaking out publicly in favor of the library. They're doing it because they truly love the library and they want to see the library succeed. So your friends and foundation boards are great people. If you have a volunteer program at your library, our volunteers are wonderful. And they talk, I hear them talking about in the community all the time. And it's not unusual for me to be approached by someone who said, I was talking to one of your volunteers who was telling me you're doing this. I had no idea you do that. That's wonderful. How do I volunteer? So it's a great way not only to get new volunteers, but it's, you know, our volunteers see what's going on. They see what you do every day. They see how you work. They see what you do for the kids. They see what you do for the elderly. They see what you do for everybody in the community, regardless of who they are. We don't care, you know, we don't care about people's gender or their race or their religion. We just want to serve people. And our volunteers see us doing that every day when we don't even recognize it sometimes. We just kind of do it because it's who we are. It's in our DNA. So our volunteers are great. Parents, students, community movers and shakers. Every community has those people who are involved in everything, who are on every board, who, you know, are involved in their church, who are on the school board, who are in the Kiwanis, who are in the Rotary, you know, all those people who are known for the good works they do. Well, let them know about the library. When you see them out in the community, let them know what you're doing. You know, invite them to come to an event. And I think a lot of times we forget to do this with many of these people. You know, how often do you invite an elected official to come and just sit in on a story time? We did a book club once at Kenton County where we asked our 3 county commissioners and our judge, each one of them, to do a book club. So they each chose a book and they led the book club discussion for that week. It was great. They loved doing it. They got to pick the book. People could come if they wanted to. They didn't have to come if they didn't want to. But it got those people into our building. They enjoyed doing it. The people enjoyed sitting there and hearing what their county officials had to say about the book, and they got to know their county officials better. You can do that on the city level. You can do that with your local ministers group. You know, the possibilities are endless if you think about it. And keep a list. This is one thing that I do. I have a list of advocates and their emails. You never know when you might need advocates, and it's great to have that list handy. If you need a group of people to make phone calls or emails to our legislators, it's great to have a list of people that you can call on that you know will do that for you. And you know, having those people ready to go when you need them and having them in an easily found place seems simple, but it's really important and it really can save you. Again, it's not just the director's job, it's all of our jobs. So be practical about what you do. We all need to work together, so we're all in this together. We talked about being involved in community groups. And, you know, I think sometimes we expect the director to do everything and we expect the director to be everything. And I don't mind. I mean, I actually enjoy sometimes going to meetings and community groups because it's a way for me to find out what's going on in the community and how we can expand what we're doing and how we can work with others. But some directors are a little bit more introverted and that's not really their thing. Well, I guarantee you there's someone on the staff that's more extroverted that would love to go to one of those meetings and represent the library. So it doesn't have to be just the director, but it has to be all of us working together, and we all have to know what we're doing, because we can't be doing it in these silos. The director needs to know who's going to meetings and representing the library. So you can't just do it rogue. You have to have permission, or you have to talk to your director about, maybe it would be good if I went to this meeting and, told them about what we're doing, those kinds of things. So it can be all of us, but we just all need to be on the same page. The staff, the director, everyone has to be on the same page.
Hey, Dave, I just wanted to draw attention to a comment in the chat, since it kind of goes along with the example you gave about the commissioners doing the book discussion group. Christy says, we invited the mayor to read Green Eggs and Ham during our Dr. Seuss program.
Wonderful.
If you guys have other examples of things like that, feel free to share in the chat.
That is great, and not only does the mayor then get to see the inside of the library and walk around the library and get to meet people. The library is giving him or her the opportunity to present in front of a group of people, because even though it's a children's book, their parents are coming with them. So the mayor gets a little PR out of it. The library gets the mayor in the building. And hopefully if you can get a picture of that and get it in your local newspaper, either if it's online or in print, that's even better. All of those things are very important to making sure that, we are being good advocates. So that's a great example. Let's see. Material challenges are one thing that we're hearing a lot of, and one thing that we need to be careful about when we're being advocates. So I wanted to throw out some things that probably we should talk about, because we're seeing this more and more, not only across Kentucky, but across the country. We're seeing a significant jump in material challenges. And it's not just adult materials, it's children's materials, and it's young adult materials. And it's probably not slowing down anytime soon. Some key things that we need to remember, and as library staff, we need to remember, is that the library serves everyone, and we're tax supported. And when we talk to patrons about, when a patron says, I don't like that particular book on the shelf, we have to remind our patrons that we serve everyone, that everyone in the county pays taxes, everyone is supporting the library, and so everyone needs to be represented in the library. It's a very touchy issue, I get it. We've all dealt with it, but it's important to remind our patrons that, and I often will say to patrons, as a public library, we're constantly walking a tightrope. Because we are trying to please everyone, and it's very difficult to please everyone. We know it's almost impossible to please everyone, but what we're trying to do is provide a balanced collection that meets the needs of as many people in our county as we can. And that means there's going to be things you're going to like on the shelf, and that means you're going to find things that you're not going to like on the shelf. But to have the things you like, you're also going to have the things you don't like. Because as a public library, our mission is to serve everyone. Another issue that's come up across the state and across the country really is displays. A lot of us do displays. It could be for anything, Veterans Day is coming up. You might have a Veterans Day display. I think it's just really important with displays. I know some libraries do them, and I know some libraries have chosen not to. We do them in Kenton County. We do them frequently. There's always displays up. The important thing is, if you're doing them, to be balanced. You can't be leaning in one direction consistently. You have to, have materials out that meet the needs of a diverse group of people that live in your community. So we can't be celebrating, certain holidays and ignoring other ones. So you really need to know your community. And sometimes that some book displays just will not work in a certain community. I think somebody had a question, Lauren, that kind of addressed that. What was that
Yes.
last question?
All right. From Christy, we are a small community and get a lot of backlash on material selection. Any suggestions on how to handle this? And other
Yeah.
participants, if you want to type in some suggestions in the chat, that would be great.
And I think that kind of leads to not only book selection, but displays. They're all kind of interrelated. The thing that I always talk to people about, that we do have a formal process to challenge a material, if they really want to do that. But the goal is to try to not have to get to the point where they want to fill out the form. The goal is to try to talk to them about, you know, no matter how small the community is, there is a diversity of ideas and opinions. And yes, I do understand that, the items that you don't like, but there are people in the community that do find those materials to be helpful or valuable. And so as a true public library, we have to support everyone. And that's a hard talk to have with people sometimes, because some people are open to it, and sometimes I see the light bulb go off when I have that discussion with people. They get it, they understand it. Sometimes they're just not going to. And they are committed that their morality should be everyone's morality. And that's a hard one. I think you just have to be as kind as you can. You have to be as open and honest as you can. You have to talk about, okay, you don't like this particular book, what in the collection do you like, and what in the collection would you like us to beef up, or, would you like us to buy more copies of? And remind them to, again, I think we have to consistently remind our patrons that if we are truly a public library, we are representing everybody in the community. And again, it can be a very hard conversation. And when it comes to displays, sometimes that means probably we're not going to do a display on a particular, topic, because we know in our community that is more destructive to our existence as a public library than it would be to do it. But in other times, we know we can do those. And when we can show diversity, when we can represent everybody, we really need to do that. So, if you're in a community where you get very few book challenges or people asking about, books or complaining about materials, be thankful because there are other people who are sitting in on this session today and others across the state who are living in communities where that is much more common. And so you have to be very diplomatic. You have to stick to your guns as far as, we're here to support everyone. We're here to provide for everyone. And you have to be smart about your selections. And when I say being smart about your selections is you have to have a balanced collection. So if you're going to, buy book A, then maybe see if there's something that balances out on the other side, so that when that challenge happens, you can say, hey, yeah, we have that book, but we also have this item, that maybe is more to your liking. But it kind of brings me down to the last point on the slide, which I think is important. And a lot of times the challenges we get have to do with children or young adults, either materials or those children or young adults getting a hold of materials that people don't like. And what it comes down to, in my opinion, is this. Do you want librarians deciding what your children read? Or do you want to decide what your children read? And I guarantee you, every parent, every guardian, every grandparent is going to say, that's the parent's right to choose what their children read. Well, I totally agree. It's in all of our policies at the Kenton County Public Library. So it's in our collection development policy, it's in our safe child policy, it's in our code of conduct, I believe. It's in multiple different places. It's part of our core values that we list on our website. That it is the patron's right to decide what their child reads. It's not the parent's right to decide what other children read. And that is a valuable point to make. If you don't want your child to read that material, then you certainly have that right to say to your child, we're not going to check that item out. But you can't say to another parent, well, you can't have that either. Because turnabout is fair play. You know, that parent can say the same thing to you, and then we have nothing on the shelf. So, you know, when we've had these issues flare up in Kenton County, that's been the point that most people seem to get. That as librarians, it's our job to provide a balanced and fair collection. It's the parent, the guardian, the grandparent, whoever is the caretaker of the child to decide what they read or what they don't read. It's not the librarian's job to make that decision for them. And I don't think parents want us to be doing that. So that is an argument that you can make. Did that answer your question? And have any more popped up, Lauren?
Okay, Christy says that did answer her question. We don't have any additional questions right now, but just a reminder, folks, please type them in the chat.
Yes, and again, those are very hard conversations sometimes to have because people are very passionate about certain topics, and they will fight you on it. And I get it. Our job is to stay as calm as we can, to stick to our core values of we serve everyone. I think, you know, reminding, especially when it's a children's item, reminding people that it's the right of the parent, the guardian, the grandparent, whoever is the custodian of the child, it's their right, their decision to make what their child reads, not the library's. And that right doesn't extend to other parents. You know, they don't get to tell other parents what their children can read because families are all different. They all have different ideas. They all have different, you know, moral codes. They all, you know, all families are different in one way or another. And so we need to allow those families to decide what's best for them. And libraries shouldn't be doing that, and other parents shouldn't be doing that. But it is our job to provide that balanced collection. Be prepared. So have statistics ready. When people, you know, are challenging materials, you know, you can say, you know, this is not a frequent occurrence. You know, we have 160 something thousand people in Kenton County. We're the third largest library, third largest county in Kentucky, and the third biggest library in Kentucky. I had 2 challenges last year. We don't formal challenges where people filled out the paperwork. You know, they're unusual. They don't happen that frequently. And you know, having that information ready to say to people, you know, this is, you know, for how many people we serve and how many items we check out. So knowing how many items you checked out is important because you can say, you know, we checked out, you know, I'm trying to think, we checked out close to 2 million items last year. And we had 2 people complain. And, you know, formally complain if using the form. You know, that's a pretty darn good record. And so, you know, having those numbers ready is a good thing. Have stories to tell. So, you know, talk about what the library is doing and you know, why it's important and have those stories about, you know, how the person who is a shut-in, you know, really has very little contact with the outside world, but loves when the homebound staff member comes by and drops off the book and maybe sits and talks with them for a few minutes. How important that is to them. About, you know, a child who came to you and said, I read this book and I loved it. And, you know, it made me look at the world differently. Or, you know, there's so many great stories that we have and collecting them is important. In my monthly report that I give to the board, I have a section called Good News, and it's quotes that we have collected from staff. So I usually do 3, maybe 4, sometimes 2, depending on how many I get. But a quote that we got from a patron who got really good service. And I let the board know that. And it's in my written report. And so I send that out to the staff as well. So staff are hearing these good stories too. You know, those good stories can counteract the bad ones. So using social media and using the media in general, we need to tell our stories ourselves. We haven't always been great at that in libraries. We've allowed others to tell our stories. I think it's very important that we take control of telling our own stories. So how do we present ourselves to the public is very important. And having those strong stories and those statistics and all of those things that we can say, this is why the library is important, goes a long way towards kind of tamping down some of that discontent we hear occasionally. So when we're talking about media or social media, what is your message? Do you have a plan? You know, what are you trying to convey and what you put out to the public? All of those things are important, and all of those things are things we need to be thinking about. Some libraries are lucky enough and big enough to have a PR department. Some are not. But all of us have wonderful staff who can figure that out. You know what your message is. Write it down. Make sure that you're constantly following through on that and communicating that message in everything you do. You don't have to have a PR specialist to do that. You just need to be smart about it. And you know, we know our stories. We just need to get better at telling them. The First Amendment. So when the question about, you know, book challenges, etc. The First Amendment the First Amendment covers the freedom and access to information, freedom of the press. It also applies to minors. Minors do have freedom of speech. There is no limit on age of freedom of speech. So children have the right to speak as well as adults, meaning they also have the right to access information just like adults do. And yes, we can put limitations on things, and we probably all in our libraries, you know, we limit things in some ways by putting them in specific collections. So if things are in children's or in young adult or adult. But we also make sure that there is that, again, balanced collection that meets the needs of everyone, including our minors. And so just remember, the First Amendment isn't just an adult thing. It also includes minors. Obscenity is a big one. We often hear people complaining about materials because they say they're obscene or they're pornographic. Well, there is a Miller test. It's called the Miller test. It's based on a long-standing precedent in the law. It was a case that had a plaintiff called Miller. So it's called a Miller test. And for something to be declared obscene, it must meet all 3 of these, not just one, but all 3. So the average person applying contemporary community standards would find the work taken as a whole appeals to prurient interests. And I think the key phrase there is taken as a whole. You can't just go into a book and pull out one paragraph and say this book is obscene because of this one paragraph or because of this one picture. It's taken as a whole. Does the work depict or describe in a patently offensive way sexual conduct specifically defined by applicable state law? Well, none of us are attorneys, but I have a hard time thinking that we have these items on our shelves at our libraries. Whether the work, again, taken as a whole, lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. That's a judgment call, quite frankly. 4 of us in this room could pick up a book and one could say it has artistic quality and some would say it doesn't. But, you know, as long as a significant number of us say, yes, it has value, then it has value. So this Miller test, I'm just showing you this because declaring something obscene is not easy. And I want you to know, by law, declaring something obscene is very difficult. It's not something that happens frequently. Prosecutors don't like these these challenges because they're very complicated. And yes, somebody just said everything is objective. And so trying to pick out a book off the shelf and saying it's obscene, yeah, you can make trouble by doing that. But proving that, you have to meet all three of these tests, all three parts of this Miller test. And as you can see, it would be very difficult to do that. Again, so we need to remember that yes, it's a three-legged stool, so to speak. You can't just claim one leg; you have to claim all. And I think taken as a whole in those two, in part one and part three is also very important, because a lot of times someone will come up to you and point out a paragraph or a picture and say, this book is obscene because of this paragraph or this picture. Well, you can't just take out the one piece and say it's obscene. You have to look at the entire volume. You have to look at the entire item. And so to say an entire book lacks all serious literary, artistic, or political or scientific value is a really high bar for someone to prove. So obscenity is a scary word. We don't like hearing it. We don't want to deal with it, but I wanted to throw it out there because it's being thrown around a lot in libraries, not by librarians, because we don't, we're not putting obscene materials on the shelf, but by some people in our community. So I just kind of wanted you to know that the definition of obscenity is a really high bar. And so it's a scary word, and I wanted to try to pat that down a little bit for you, that reaching that goal of being declared obscene is not as easy as one would think. And then the last one, this is very new. The Right to Read Act has been introduced by ALA to the US Congress. It was done on October 7th of this year. It's basically around teachers, so school librarians. But it is, again, guaranteeing First Amendment rights to school children and school librarians, providing protection for teachers and librarians, acting to provide access to reading materials. So ALA is working on our behalf as well, trying to make sure that we are ahead of the game. I will tell you, I served on the American Library Association's Committee on Advocacy for a term, and I still talk to the people on that committee and the staff at ALA. They are working very hard on making sure that we're trying to keep ahead of these challenges. They are very adept at understanding that in some communities, their involvement is welcome. In some communities, it's not that they're not welcome, but they know having an outside group come in isn't what's best for that local community. So they will support the library behind the scenes sometimes and give them what they need, but they won't be issuing a press release in that community because really that doesn't serve that community well. In some communities it does. So again, we have to know our communities and how they react. So we're running out of time. Actually, I've got like 1 minute, but we probably can go over a few minutes, I would think. So questions, who's got questions and how can I answer them? And while you're doing that, just remember, we're all advocates. And if you walk away with anything, gather stories and tell them and keep talking about us out in the community. Because the more you talk about the good things we're doing, the better off we have set ourselves in the community and the better our reputation and the more support we'll have.
Well, thank you, Dave. While we're waiting for questions to come in, we do have a couple more minutes. That's not a problem. So I'm glad you brought up the Right to Read Act. One of my coworkers shared that now congressional Republicans have introduced basically the Florida Don't Say Gay law, but at a national level. And we're hearing in Missouri that the Missouri Secretary of State, wants the to prevent libraries from using state funds to purchase, I guess, what they determine as obscenity. So there are a lot of really scary news articles going around.
There are obscenity. There are local laws on obscenity, on what is obscene, but ultimately it comes down to the Supreme Court. And the Miller test is still the sterling. That's the test it must pass when it comes right down to it. We're not seeing a whole lot of, I'm on the state advocacy committee as well. We're not seeing a whole lot of movement right now for the coming session on any of these issues. But as you all well know, they can pop up anytime, any place, anywhere. So we are keeping on top of watching these issues, seeing if they're bubbling up, trying to knock them down when we can, and making sure that you all can do your jobs, which is important. Free access to information and unbiased access to information. We're about the only group left in this country that is still doing that on a consistent level. And so I remind friends all the time, we are on the front lines of the First Amendment. We are doing, we are championing, can't say the word for some reason. We are doing what very few other agencies are doing. We are standing up for the rights of everyone in our community to have access to information. And that's important. And it's even more important today than ever because there's so much information out there. You can be a champion even if you can't pronounce it correct.
Yeah, I just have to say at the top of the presentation, oh my gosh, that segue, oh, that burned me hard. I was very impressed, Dave, taking my flub and turning it into that pivot point.
No problem. I do think, though, we all need to, we just need to be positive about what we're doing. And it's easy to let the loudest voices in our community take control. The loud people get the attention. But we have ways of getting attention too. And part of that is telling our story. And I cannot overestimate how important it is that telling our story, it's just key to our success in our future. We need to let our patrons know what we do, why we do it, and why it's important. And the overwhelming majority, I think, of our patrons and our taxpayers understand once we get the point across that even though they don't like everything on our shelves, that what we're doing is beneficial to our communities and is beneficial to who we are as Americans. And so getting that across as much as we possibly can is essential to our future, and to make sure that libraries continue on in the future and that our children and grandchildren have libraries to go to in the future. So it's easy to get kind of down when we hear these kind of, attacks, and we hear people, wanting to ban books and those kinds of things. But let's counteract that with all the good things that we're doing and making sure people know about it. And, I'm a historian by trade. I got my master's in history before I got my master's in library science. And so history is, I tend to look at the world through historical perspective. And any group that bans books, that goes after intellectual thought, that tries to destroy ideas, is a group that ultimately fails because it doesn't work. People won't stand for it. They do a lot of damage sometimes in between, and sometimes it's on the far right, and sometimes it's been on the far left. So we just need to remember that freedom of speech, freedom of thought is important, and it will always prevail. Our job is to make that happen as much as we can in our local communities, in our local libraries, and to do as much as we can in the settings in which we're in. And again, I think it's important that we know our communities. In some areas, we can do more than others. And that is a product of where you live, not necessarily what you as an individual think. But we all can do something. We all can tell that story.
Well, thank you so much, Dave. That is a very powerful statement to end on. Before we stop, I just wondered, if any of the viewers have questions or want to pursue more in advocacy in a formal way. Could they contact you? Should they contact the KPLA Advocacy Committee?
They can contact me. My email address is dave.schroeder@kentonlibrary.org.
There we go.
Yep, there it is.
Excellent.
You can send me an email, and I'll be glad to answer back and answer any questions you have, or if you just want to talk about an issue, I'm happy to do that. We've got a great advocacy committee as well that has different specialties, so I can send you to the right person. And but yeah, KPLA has committed to advocacy in a big way. We think it's a huge part of what we do and a huge part of our future. And so we're always looking for new and exciting ways to advocate for libraries. So if you got ideas, send them to me and I'll send them to the committee, because it's a lot of times it's those people who work on the front lines that give us the best ideas. You're working with the patrons every day. Let us know your ideas.
Excellent. Well, thanks again so much. We always appreciate the wisdom you have to share. We'll go ahead and stop the recording, but you can hang out in the room for a minute if you guys have any questions.
Sure.